Hey everyone, it's Marky Billson, your voice of choice for a new generation of Tri-City sports fans. I am Marky Billson. I said that twice. I'm just liking saying, I want to call myself the Roadrunner from now on. I got the hardest hitting opinions, but you know what? I am the poor little Roadrunner. I never bother anyone. Getting that incorporated in. Hey, talked about this in Chris Adamski after Steve Forbes joins us in the next break. Chris Adamski covers the Pittsburgh Steelers for TribLive.com. He once took over my beat at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Good old friend of mine, and he's now the Steelers reporter. And so, let's get the skinny from the locker room. What really was James Harrison like down there, and can he help the New England Patriots win their 6th Super Bowl title to tie the Steelers for the all-time record and really become the great dynasty of NFL and maybe the great franchise of the NFL? I mean, think about what's at stake right here. You know, you talk about the Cowboys, and certainly they'll be on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities this Sunday against the Eagles, 1 o'clock kickoff and 1:35 pregame, 12:30 pregame. 12:30 pregame, 1 o'clock kickoff. I'm still in baseball mode. I'm sorry, 1:35 first pitch. You know, that's no. Kickoff 1 o'clock. It's standard. You know this. 12:30 pregame. Okay, so you're driving home from church or wherever you may be. You know, you turn on 1420 and the Cowboys. By the way, the Cowboys and Eagles will not be shown locally, except at sports bar or something. But we will have that on our airwaves this Sunday. So if you're an old Cowboys fan, or if you're a transplant from Philly, one of the cheesesteak eaters, well, then you can come down and listen to 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities and follow the game. Heck, I did that years ago during when the Cowboys were on WXIS. So anyway, just wanted to point that up. But the Cowboys, Cowboys used to be, well, we went to the most Super Bowls. For a while it was, we had won the most Super Bowls. Now, no. Steelers have more Super Bowl victories, 6-5. But the Patriots have now been to the most Super Bowls. They've been to 9. 7 with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and also a couple, remember 96 with Bledsoe and Parcells, and yeah, they were the cannon fodder for the 85 Monsters of the Midway back in Super Bowl 20. Raymond Berry, an underrated coach, was the man that brought them to the Super Bowl back then. So, that's the most Super Bowls. The Cowboys, let me see here. Cowboys went to 3 in the 90s and 5 in the 70s, so that's 8 Super Bowls for the Cowboys. But, Steelers have been to 8. They've won 6 of them. Anyway, NFL history here on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. But yeah, would the Patriots then become the flagship franchise of the NFL if they tied the Steelers for the most Super Bowls in terms of victories, which if they win it this year, then they'll certainly have, and then have 10 Super Bowl championships among them. Of course, the Steelers are here. They're fighting for their legacy here. They're not just fighting for this year. They're fighting for, Bradshaw and Harris and Lambert and Ham and Green and Knoll. They're fighting for continuing to have their franchise with the most Super Bowls. If they win it this year, they'll have a 2-game advantage. They'll have 7. And they'll tie the Patriots for the most Super Bowls. Hard to say that isn't the flagship station of the NFL. Flagship station, listen to me. The flagship team of the NFL, if that does occur. Anyway, Josh Dobbs, though, Landry Jones getting the start at quarterback. Remember that, fantasy football players. I got to find another quarterback myself. I've got Roethlisberger. You don't care about that. Nobody cares about anyone else's fantasy football team unless by chance you might be playing me this week. But Roethlisberger they're going to rest him, give him a 2-week rest evidently, and go with Landry Jones. Hey, it's the Cleveland Browns. They're 0-15. How tough can they be? But I wouldn't at all be surprised if that meant that Josh Brown, the Tennessee quarterback, got his debut somewhere in that game, especially if it isn't quite that competitive. The big story that I see, by the way, I wanted to point this out. T. Martin, who also had a similar role, third-string quarterback with the Steelers, almost a generation ago. But I actually remember in a game, a season finale at Heinz Field against a bad Cleveland Browns team, games decided, and they put in all of the second stringers in the second half to carry the Steelers to the victory and so on. And T. Martin got a cup of coffee towards the end of the fourth quarter. If you want to look at the stats, he had 1 8-yard rush. I remember trying to get out of the snow and watching that 8-yard rush on one of the monitors underneath, as a matter of fact. I think what I was doing was, at the time, there was actually a post-game show with Myron Cope. And I think what I was doing is I was going to that post-game show and trying to get there early so I could get a good seat and also a space by a heater to go and witness that show in the post-game. So I was there a little early, that sort of thing. And so that's why I wasn't glued to my seat towards the end. All right. But look for Dobbs, actually, to get some playing time here against the Browns. I guess the question is, can the Browns avoid the indignity, I'll say it, of not going 0-16? Lions were 0-16 about 10 years ago. The Baltimore Colts in their penultimate season were 0-8-1. Tampa Bay Buccaneers were 0-14. The Stardinals, the 1944 merger during the World War II of the Chicago Cardinals and Pittsburgh Steelers, were 0-10. There are a few other really bad teams along the way in football history, but those are probably the most well-known winless teams, and that's what the Browns are trying to avoid, going 1-31, which will be historically bad. It's already historically bad, but this is getting to be worst team in NFL history type of mode. I would take this year's Browns, however, over the Lions of yore. That Lions team just lost every game by a lot of points. At least the Browns took a bad Packers team to overtime. The 82 Colts actually tied the Packers. That was their one lone thing. And then Frank Kush, their grumpy coach, said, "That's not a victory. No moral victories here." One of the other storylines, the Titans, basically, they got to win to get in. I know. They lose, and the Raiders beat the Chargers, and the Bills lose the Dolphins. They can back their way in. You don't want that. You don't want to lose your way into the playoffs. And frankly, the Chargers are going to beat the Raiders, and the Bills are going to beat the Dolphins. So the Titans, on a 3-game losing streak, they got to beat the Jaguars. For some reason, Jacksonville is saying, as they go to Nashville for the game, with the 3rd seed in the AFC all locked up, they can't fall from it. They can't improve from it. They're going to play the 6th seed in the NFL playoffs, which would likely mean a rematch with the Titans in, what would it be then, 9 or 10 days, I suppose, 8, 9, or 10 days. What you would see is 9 or 10 days, 9 or 10. But down in Jacksonville. I'm not buying this, we're going to play our starters. They're not going to play them for the whole game. Trust me on this one. I'm not even sure if it's a competitive game, if it's, say, 10-10 at halftime, that the starters are going back for Jacksonville. I know, 11-5 is going to look real good, better than 10-6. But I've seen 10-6 teams win the Super Bowl, and that's going to be irrelevant for the Jaguars' chances against, let's say, the Steelers in the NFL playoffs, should the Jaguars win their playoff game. Of course, Henry's starting above Murray at running back for the Titans. That's the big news out of Nashville. The thing is, and I've seen this happen a lot, look for, as the game goes on, the starters to get pulled from Jacksonville. Now, does that mean that if the Titans start to rally against the second string, because they're going to play their first for the whole game, that they have to, that the first stringers go in for the Jaguars? Probably not. Look, Jaguars aren't getting a bye. I think they ought to use this week as a bye I think they ought to start Chad Henne. I think they ought to play Chris Ivory. My guess is that they will. Whatever statistical goals that regular starters have, once they're met, they'll get pulled. And frankly, I do see the chances of a Titans victory good for that reason. I have seen second-string teams with an opponent that needs to win to make the playoffs beat said opponent with the second stringers. It has happened before. And yeah, the Titans haven't exactly been playing all that well, although you do wonder if the onside kick against the Rams was called the right way, if that couldn't have been the determining factor and give the Titans a victory instead of a 27-23 loss. But then again, the Titans had a chance to win it on their last drive, and it stalled out 4 and out at midfield. So, yeah, the Titans have not been playing like playoff contenders. Then again, you also wonder this. The Jaguars, they're coming off a loss to Jimmy Garoppolo and the San Francisco 49ers, in which they allowed 44 points. Maybe, just maybe, the feeling here is it's best to have the starters get back to earth, if you will, to right their ship than it is to take a day off. It's not the John Robinson strategy of, at this time, a day of rest is as important as a day of practice. And yeah, what do I always say? Hey, if you haven't gotten it by 15 games, you're not going to get it. That's just a standard operating, it's just standard. But that might be the motivation for the Jags to play some of their starters. I just don't think it'll be for 4 quarters, and I still think that that means a likely Titans victory and a likely Titans playoff appearance, and I'm happy because I really would like to see Malarkey and his staff return. I like them. That's a biased viewpoint, but I've covered them and I like them. What can I say? Tri-City Sports Now. When we return, Steve Forbes, head coach of the red-hot ETSU Buccaneers. WEMB Irwin.